All right, so I opened up Lexi's as a good example of your approach, right? So you can see that she started off with her sketch. She added new layers on top of her sketch. I like that some of them are labeled, right? So that she knows what they are. Some aren't. But I feel like it's pretty organized. This is exactly how I work. I would try to make sure everything was as organized as possible, but it's okay if, not everything is labeled. But sometimes labeling it just helps. So you can see she kind of added her details as she's working. So you should, by the end of the week, have your 2 sketches complete. And what you want to make sure you do is when you're working, turn your background on and off so that you can see what it looks like. Your background sketch is just your sketch. You're essentially going to get rid of it. And it's just going to, would be like your final character study of this pose. But now the question is, okay, so you have these 2 poses. How are you going to combine them together? You might have 3 poses. So what I'm going to have you do is turn your sketch off so that you have like your final drawing complete when you get to this point. Then you're going to flatten it. Okay, so under this little icon on the top right of your layer bar, it looks like 4 little horizontal bars. You're going to choose flatten image. Discard hidden layers, yes, because we want to discard the background copy. Hit OK. And what that's going to do, it's going to create a white background, which is fine, is just flatten and merge all of your layers together. And disregarding your sketch. So this would be a good example of where to take your image. Let me do the next one. So this is Lexi's other copy. So you can see that she's got all of her layers. I turned her sketch on and off. I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to flatten it. Hit OK. And she does have like a little bit of a color swatch here, color swatch to work with, which I think is great. We can disregard that by even just using your eyedropper, picking up the white, and just erasing it, getting rid of it. You don't want to use your eraser. Your eraser won't work because this layer is locked, number one. But even if you unlocked it and used your eraser, what's going to happen is it's going to erase the entire background. So essentially what you want to do is keep that background, so use your paintbrush and just paint it in, and that kind of does the same thing. You could kind of work around it and erase little marks that maybe you want to get rid of that are unnecessary and so forth. So now you have your 2 characters, right, that are flattened. You're going to open up, this will be considered your final. This is what I'm going to look at. So you're going to open up a new file, and you're going to make it 8.5 by 11, just standard. So I'm going to change my width to 8.5, and I'm going to change my height to 11. You can hold it either way. 8.5 by 11 would be taller, would be tall orientation. But if your character is like short and like wide, you might want to do a horizontal. Okay, I'm going to change my resolution to 300. Now, if you're working in Illustrator, I will I'll go over that separately with you. All right, so this really just applies to people working in Photoshop. All right, now I'm going to create my file. Okay, and this will be my final copy. So now what I'm going to do is I feel like I created one before. I'm going to go back to my character, and I'm going to select it. So what I'm going to do is select all by doing Control A. Control A will select the entire image. You can see that there's like a little selection around it. And I'm going to copy it by doing Control C. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is go back to my untitled document that I created, and I'm going to do Control V. Right. And there is the first pose. Right. Um, I'm not giving any specs about what specific size it needs to be. Just make sure it takes up most of the space in the appropriate space within the space provided. I don't want it to be like really tiny, and I don't want it to be off the page. Make sure it's like centered, leaving a little bit of space around it. Okay. Another thing that you want to do is, this is now about like aligning. Okay. So, open up your rulers. If your rulers aren't open, you do Control R. Control R will open your rulers up, and what you can do is take out guidelines. So using your mouse and clicking down on the ruler and pulling down from there, a little guideline will come down. I'm just going to put it on this foot here. Okay, so I kind of know where she's located. And then actually to find the center, if it's 8.5, make it 4.25. So that would be center. Using my move tool, I might move her to center her more, or I can actually use my arrows to nudge her. So right now I am nudging her with my arrows. It seems that she would be most centered like around here, but it doesn't really look like it makes sense to me, so I'm going to move her this way a little bit more. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to take my next character. So I did that one. Okay, now I'm going to do this one. Again, Control A, Control C, go back to my untitled document, Control V. Now, the question is, how are you going to align this character? What you can do is, before you do Control T to transform her, lower the opacity of that layer, and you can kind of see through the layer. Okay, so I did Control T. I'm gonna kind of try to match her up as best I can. Okay. Another thing you can do, so that kind of looks good. Her feet are moving. Okay. And then you could turn the opacity up, turn your layers on and off, and you can kind of see how she moves, right? And then if you feel like she's like a little bit too big, I might go back in, lower the opacity just a little bit, make her just a little bit smaller, right? Put the opacity back up again, and then you can see her moving. Right, so that's just my video for now. This is about refining. So now at this stage, you might also want to look closely at, like, I know that Lexi's probably not done with these, but you can tell that like this one isn't finished yet. She's still working on it. You know, the shadows aren't on it like they are on this one. You know, might work on like making sure that colors are matching, that scaling of different body parts are matching, things are flowing from one to the next as you're working on it. And then I would save this as save it as a PSD. So when you do File, Save As, the format will automatically come up as a Photoshop file, and I would save it as a Photoshop file and just name it like Good Animation or something like that. So you know that that's like your animation file. And in each layer, if you decide that you're going to work in this file, make sure you're working on that layer, or else it's going to mess with your animation. And that's it. So the next video I will show will contain information about how to set it up as an actual animation, like using the animation tools in